Zainab's sermon and its historical background. The sermon of Imam Zayn Al-Abidin by Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi. Introduction. Zaynab is the granddaughter of the Prophet of Islam, the daughter of Ali and Fatima, and the sister of Hassan and Hussein, peace be upon them all. She was born in a holy environment and raised in the laps of infallible parents, and so it was not a surprise to see that Zaynab reached to such a level of wisdom and righteousness that Shia scholars describe her as mahfuzatun anil khata, protected from error. The most important event in Zaynab's life is the tragedy of Karbala, a movement whose first stage was led by Imam Hussein and Zaynab led its second stage. In the post-Karbala event, the sermons of Zaynab are very significant, especially her sermon in the court of Yazid. To understand the importance and far-reaching impact of Zaynab's sermon, it is necessary to know the history of Sham and the Umayyad political strategies. In this article, I have tried to present the historical background of the sermon and its important salient features. Conquest of Sham and the family of Abu Sufyan. When the great Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passed away in 11 AH, Islam was confined to the Arabian Peninsula. With the conquest of the caliphs, the Muslim empire expanded to include Sham, Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. In this historical time frame, Sham was not confined to present-day Syria. Rather, until World War I, its borders included Lebanon, Jordan, and the entire Palestine. This vast area of the Middle East is collectively known as Ash-Shamat, the Greater Syria. During his reign, the first caliph dispatched 3 armies to conquer Sham, one under the command of Amr bin As towards Palestine, another under the command of Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah towards Hims, and a third under the command of Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, the elder son of Abu Sufyan, towards Damascus. Later on, the second caliph not only maintained the ranks of Abu Sufyan's sons, he actually promoted them. In 18 AH, Yazid bin Abu Sufyan and other senior officers died because of an epidemic. Upon Yazid's death, the second caliph appointed Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan towards the governorship of Damascus and Jordan. The third caliph promoted Muawiyah by making him the governor general of Sham, which covered the entirety of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Now, with this brief historical survey, 3 points have become clear. First, Sham, during the Prophet's life, was part of the Eastern Roman Empire and mostly a Christian territory. From the first day of its conquest, whatever the people of Sham came to know of Islam was mostly through the lenses of the family of Abu Sufyan. Neither had the people of Sham visited the Prophet, nor had they seen the people of Medina. The only source of understanding Islamic ideals and values was the Banu Umayyah, specifically the family of Abu Sufyan. The family of Abu Sufyan fully exploited the ignorance of the people of Sham and brainwashed them. In order to project Muawiyah as a close relative of the Prophet, dubious titles like Khalul Mu'mineen, the uncle of the believers, and Katibul Wahi, the scribe of the revelation, were widely circulated about him. I'm using the term dubious because neither any of the other brother-in-laws of the Prophet, such as Abdullah bin Omar and Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, were ever known as Khalul Mu'mineen, nor were Zayd bin Thabit or Khalid bin Sa'id were so publicly known as Katibul Wahi. The reality is that after the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ considered the people of Mecca, including Abu Sufyan and his family, as tulaqa, the freed slaves, and mu'allafatul qulub, those whose hearts have to be reconciled with Islam. They were not given any official position by the Prophet as long as he was alive. Number 3, it was on the basis of these 20 to 22 years of brainwashing the people of Sham and establishing his power base that Muawiyah decided to oppose Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam and even planned to fight him. Exploiting the murder of the third caliph, Muawiyah opposed the new ruler chosen by the Ummah, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam. He had projected such a negative image of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the minds of the people of Sham that when they got the news of Ali's assassination inside the Grand Mosque of Kufa, they started asking one another that what was Ali doing in the mosque? In their minds, Ali and mosque could not coexist together. Finally, in the year 40 AH, after the peace treaty, Muawiyah became the absolute ruler of the Muslim world. Muawiyah's political strategy. The Umayyad government, established by Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, was founded on two opposite strategies: propaganda and military might. And both these strategies were used with wicked shrewdness. Number one, the domination over Sham was maintained by propaganda. And number two, the domination of all other regions like Hijaz, Iraq, Yemen, Persia, and Egypt was maintained by military might. For a better understanding of these two political strategies, a survey of the present political strategy of the United States of America would be helpful. America's domestic and foreign policies are based on two different strategies. Number one, its domestic policy. It is based on the liberal democratic system in which the public opinion is respected. Media, of course, plays a pivotal role in forming the public opinion, and therefore, whatever party can mold the public opinion gets the majority votes. In such a democratic system, the public can even remove the president, like Nixon, from the office. And now, the foreign policy, which is the same democratic America when pursuing its interests globally. Very rarely, it ignores public opinion of other nations and uses its military might, directly or through local dictators, to impose its will. Keeping these two different policies of America in mind, I apply that to Muawiyah's strategies. He maintained power within the country, that is Sham, on basis of propaganda, and he maintained power outside the country, like Iraq, Hijaz, Yemen, Persia, and Egypt, on basis of Sham's military might. In order to control the minds of the people of Sham, Muawiyah had advised his son Yazid that whenever he would have to quell the upbringings in other countries, he should indeed use the Shami forces, and once he has quelled the rebellion, he should bring the Shami forces back to the country, because if they stay longer in other countries, their behavior would change. Here, the behavioral change actually refers to the broadening of their minds and their exposure to the real image of the family of Abu Sufyan and its continuous opposition to the Prophet of Islam until it was finally subdued in the conquest of Mecca. Hussein's strategy. It was in such a context that Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam analyzed the Muslim world and he saw that the Ummah was suffering from two problems. Number one, inside Sham, the Muslims suffered from ignorance and misinformation. And number two, outside Sham, like Hijaz, Iraq, Persia, Yemen, and Egypt, the Muslims suffered from apathy and a slumbering conscience. Two different social ills required two different solutions. Outside Sham, the Ummah required awakening, and inside Sham, the Ummah required awareness. For revival of and awakening the slumbering conscience of the Ummah, Imam Hussein chose a part of martyrdom and sacrifice. For creating awareness among the people of Sham and dispelling misinformation from them, Hussein needed the help of the women of his family, who would fulfill that task when taken as prisoners to Sham. Hussein took the responsibility of awakening the slumbering conscience of the Ummah, while Zaynab took the responsibility of creating awareness among the people of Sham. That is why Zaynab is known as Sharikatul Hussein, the partner of Hussein. The summary of this analysis is that Muawiyah had built an iron curtain around Sham, which blocked any idea from reaching the people, and their minds remained intoxicated with Umayyad propaganda. This wall of propaganda was so strong that neither Ali's sword could bring it down, nor could Hassan's peace make a crack in it, and even Hussein's innocent blood could not dampen its foundation. Indeed, that wall came crumbling down with the sermons of Lady Zaynab and Imam Zayn Al-Abidin. The atmosphere of Yazid's court. The court of Yazid was filled with senior officials, dignitaries of Sham, some ambassadors of foreign governments, and religious leaders of other faiths. It was in such a setting that the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was brought in as prisoners without any veils or scarves. A herald was constantly announcing in the bazaar, as well as the imperial court, that the head of a dissident is being brought, who had rebelled against the caliph. The blessed head of the Imam was presented to Yazid on a silver plate and placed in front of his throne. Overcome with his apparent victory, Yazid started poking the blessed head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam with a stick and expressing his joy by reciting the following lines of a blasphemous poetry by Abdullah bin Az-Zibari. The Hashemites staged a drama for domination, for there was no divine news nor any revelation. Wish my ancestors killed in Badr would see the pain of Khazraj caused by pointed spears. Yazid's display of arrogance and blasphemous words prompted Lady Zainab to stand up and address him in the court filled with the elite of Sham. The aura of her personality, even as a prisoner, and the eloquence of her speech were such that Yazid could not do anything to prevent her from speaking. Zainab's sermon. The preamble. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, and blessings be upon my grandfather, the chief of God's messengers. Indeed, Almighty Allah has spoken the truth when He said, "Then the final state of those who do evil was that they denied the signs of Allah and they used to ridicule them." Surah 30, ayat number 10. In this passage, we could see that Bibi Zainab puts an emphasis that the Prophet is my grandfather. He is from our family, from Ali's family, and not from your family, O Yazid. Additionally, Bibi Zainab's mastery over the Quran became obvious by her selection of verses in this sermon. After praising Allah and asking for a blessing upon the Prophet, she recites the first verse that is very befitting for the occasion and is fully applicable on Yazid. In other words, she is saying that, O Yazid, the lines of poetry that you recited demonstrates that those who do evil deeds will eventually deny the Quran as a revelation and ridicule it. Lastly, the signs of Allah in the passage can refer to the Quran as well as the blessed head of Imam al-Hussein. The sermon then continues. Bibi Zainab says, "Do you think, O Yazid, now that you have seized the vastness of the earth from us and constrained the horizons upon us, and that we are being herded like the prisoners, that Allah wishes humiliation for us and honor for you, and that in this great importance for you with Allah? And that in this is a great importance for you with Allah, so you're being haughty and looking around exuberantly and happily, since you see that the world is in your control and its affairs are lined up for you, and our country is exclusively for you, and the government is purely for you? But hold on and slow down. Have you forgotten Almighty Allah's words? Let the faithless not suppose that the respite that we grant them is good for their souls. We give them respite only that they may increase in sin, and eventually there is a humiliating punishment for them." Surah 3, ayat number 178. In this passage, we see Bibi Zainab did not address the ruthless ruler by his common titles. Rather, she addressed him by his name only. This was a slap on his face. Also, look at the courage of the daughter of Allah's lion. Right in the court of Yazid, she describes his rule and government as an usurped power and claims it to be her family's right. Also, again, by quoting the verse from the chapter 3, she tells Yazid that he should not consider his apparent victory as a sign of Allah's pleasure. There may be delay in reprisal, but it will eventually come. Now, the sermon continues, where Bibi Zainab exposes Yazid's family background. She says, "O the son of the freed slave, is it just that you cover your women and slave girls with veils when you parade the daughters of Allah's messengers as prisoners? You have torn their apparel coverings, exposed their faces, and the enemies ushered them on from one city to another. The dwellers of the caravan, as well as the ones from the cities, were looking towards them, and the people from near and far, as well as the noble and the servants, were scrutinizing their faces, while they had neither a helper from their menfolk, nor a protector from their protectors." In this passage, when Bibi Zainab says, "O son of the freed slave," right in the presence of the elite and the government official of Sham, she exposes his family background. At the conquest of Mecca in 8 after AH, After seeing the strength of the Muslim army, Yazid's grandfather Abu Sufyan and his family converted to Islam. If Zainab's grandfather, the Prophet of Islam, had wished, he could have made the people of Mecca, including Abu Sufyan and his family, as his personal slaves. But the Prophet manifested his benevolence and emancipated the people of Mecca by saying, "Go, you are free." In other words, I could have made you my slaves, but I let you go as freed slaves. With such an exposure, the people of Sham heard for the first time that Yazid's grandparents and father embraced Islam in the later years of the Prophet's life, and that they were the Prophet's freed slaves. Such a revelation must have shattered the aura of Khalul Mu'mineen, the uncle of the believers, from the mind of the people of Sham. BIBI Zainab then continues on with her sermon and exposes Yazid's behavioral background. She says, "There is neither anything unusual about you, nor any surprise in your actions. How can there be any hope of consideration from child of a person whose mouth spat the liver of the righteous ones, and whose flesh grew upon the blood of the martyrs? A person who looks towards us with disdain, rancor, vendetta, and secret grudge does not wait long before displaying his hatred towards us, the Ahlulbayt." Here in this passage, we see BIBI Zainab describing the behavioral profile of Yazid, a profile in which she cannot expect any justice because his character is influenced by his grandmother, Hind, a ruthless and immoral person. As a proof to the people of Sham, Zainab refers to the Battle of Uhud, in which Yazid's grandmother ordered her slave to cut open the abdomen of Hamza, the Prophet's uncle, from which she took out his liver and tried to chew on it. That is why Yazid's grandmother came to be known as Akilatul Akbad, the liver eater. We also see here that BIBI Zainab also exposes Yazid's inner hatred towards the family of the Prophet, the Ahlulbayt. She informs the people of Sham that the family of Abu Sufyan is not part of the family of the Prophet. On the contrary, their hearts are filled with hatred towards the family of the Prophet, and they don't hesitate in expressing their rancor. This is completely contradictory to the verse in the Quran based on Mawaddah, which states to love the Prophet's family as an essential part of Islamic faith. BIBI Zainab then continues on with a sermon in which she describes Yazid's intention. She starts by saying, "With happiness you call out your ancestors. They will cheer and beam with joy, saying, 'O Yazid, may you not be overcome.' You're reciting this while bending down, targeting the teeth of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, chief of the youths of paradise, and poking at them with your cane. Your face had lit up with joy. I swear by my life that by spilling the blood of Muhammad's children and the star of the family of Abdul Muttalib, that is Hussein, you have scratched the old wound and revived the past animosity. You're loudly calling out your ancestors and think that you are actually calling them. They are dead and they can't hear you. Very soon you will reach their place in hell. And at that time you will wish that you had been paralyzed and dumb, so that you had not said what you had said and not done what you had done. O Allah, take our right from those who had usurped it. Take revenge from those who oppressed us, and unleash your wrath on who has spilled our blood and killed our supporters." In this passage, BIBI Zainab, in the midst of the elite of Sham, describes the differences between the family of the Prophet and the family of Abu Sufyan. If the blessed heads that Yazid is desecrating is that of the chief of the youths of paradise, then what will be the eventual destination of Yazid? If the one who was killed is the chief of youths of paradise, then the killer cannot be from those who will be in paradise. Why was Imam Hussein killed? By repeating the poems recited by Yazid, BIBI Zainab wanted to show that he killed Imam Hussein to avenge the death of his idol-worshipping infidel ancestors, who were killed in the Battle of Badr, the first battle in the history of Muslims. In that battle, when the father, the brother, and the uncle of Yazid's grandmother challenged the Muslim fighters to a duel, the Prophet sent some members of his family, the Banu Hashim, in which he sent Hamza, Ubayd, and Ali. It was by their swords that the leaders of the idol worshippers were killed. By killing Imam Hussein and other members of the Prophet's family, Yazid was avenging the death of his infidel ancestors. The sermon then continues on, where Bibi Zainab talks about the end of Yazid. She starts with saying, "O Yazid, you have done what you wanted to do. By doing what you have done, you have actually pierced your own skin and have torn your own flesh. You will surely be presented to the Messenger of Allah with your crime of spilling the blood of his descendants and your act of violating the sanctity of his family and relatives. At that time, Allah will unite them, end their separation, avenge those who oppress them, and take their right from their enemies. So do not let your act of killing them fill your excitement. Do you not remember what Allah has said in the Quran? And do not consider those who are killed in the way of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, being sustained. They are pleased with what Allah has given to them out of His grace." Surah 3, Ayat 169 to 170. Bibi Zainab then continues and says, "It suffices for you to know that on the day of judgment, Allah will be the judge, the messenger of Allah will be the plaintiff against you, and Jibreel will be the supporter of the Prophet." In this passage, Bibi Zainab is reminding Yazid that don't think by killing my brother and his family you have eliminated them. No, not at all. They are martyrs in the way of Allah. They live not only in the other world, sustained by Almighty's grace, but they will always live in the hearts of the believers. In this passage, we also realize that Allah as the judge, the Prophet as the plaintiff, and Jibreel as the witness, what chance has Yazid in escaping retribution on the day of judgment? This is a key point which should be reflected upon by those Muslims who go around preaching that Yazid is among the forgiven ones. Bibi Zainab then continues on with her sermon and challenges Yazid. She says, "Plan your stratagem, strive to your maximum, and put your best efforts, but by Allah, neither will you be able to erase our memory from people's mind, nor can you destroy our revelations, nor can you reach our heights. And your shame for killing Hussein cannot be washed out. Your idea is nothing but wrong. Your days are numbered, and your gathering will soon disperse. The day when the herald will announce, verily the curse of Allah is on oppressors." In this section, Bibi Zainab challenges Yazid on his own turf to do whatever is within his power, but he will not be able to erase the religion of her grandfather, or the Quran which was revealed upon him, or the love for his family that is found in the hearts of the Muslims. Since Bibi Zainab always maintained the zikr and the remembrance of Allah, even in the most difficult of times, to the extent that in spite of hunger and thirst, and having witnessed the murder of 18 members of her family in one day, she did not forget her night nafilah on the eve of the 11th of Muharram. And so, Allah has also kept the memory of Zainab alive within the hearts of the people. Even centuries after her passing away, Zainab's name is remembered and mentioned all over the world, whereas Yazid's name has become like a swear word. No one knows of Yazid's grave, whereas there are two famous shrines associated to Zainab, one in Damascus and the other in Cairo, and both shrines are filled with visitors and pilgrims whose prayers are answered in those places. Bibi Zainab then ends her sermon by saying, "So all praise is due to Allah, who granted our ancestors the bliss and our present generation the honor of martyrdom. And we ask Allah to complete their reward and give them even more, and make us their worthy successors. He is indeed merciful and loving. Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best supporter." The result of the sermon. Finally, the true face of the family of Abu Sufyan was exposed to the people of Sham by the sermon, let alone the Muslims of Sham. Even the Jewish, Christians, and the foreign representatives stationed in Damascus criticized Yazid for violating the sanctity of the family of his own prophet by killing its men and imprisoning its women. The sermon of Lady Zaynab and the sermon of Imam Zayn Al-Abidin complement one another. Zaynab's sermon formed the Tabarra dimension, and Imam Zayn Al-Abidin's sermon formed the Tawalla dimension. The former exposed the real identity of Abu Sufyan's family, while the latter introduced the real image of Prophet's family. Both these sermons brought down the iron curtain erected by the family of Abu Sufyan around Sham, and the government of Abu Sufyan's family crumbled in such a way that Yazid's son Muawiyah refused to sit on the throne, and the Umayyad government moved to the family of Marwan. This was the beginning of the end of the Umayyad power. As the verse of the Quran says, and the wrongdoers will soon know to what destination they will return. Surah 26, Ayah 227.